My name is Santhosh, and I head technology, but for data and analytics, not the entire technology stack. So, but having said that, a quick show of hands: how many of you have heard of Standard Chartered Bank? Not bad, not bad. It's because the reason I ask is it's not based out of US. It's an emerging markets bank, and we are headquartered in London, but we do business in Asia, Middle East, and Africa. So we are quite unique that way. So it's not a major US bank, and I'm presenting at Strata at New York. So things can't get more complex than that. But having said that, like I said, we are a trade bank. We call ourselves a bank that facilitates trade. So you've got branches in exotic locations like Mongolia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Gambia, where people don't want to do business, and along with China and Sri Lanka, etc. Basically, it's an emerging market focused bank, right? We've got more than 80,000 employees. Yeah, and the stats are here for you to see. So we are a pretty big player in the emerging market space. So, what I'm going to talk about is our data democracy journey, right? So, the first things first, right? So, this is something that I think you all would have seen. This is something that whoever has handled data in the past, in the future, who is handling data in the present, would have this kind of diagram or this kind of feed, which is RDBMS centric approach, disparate data sources, fragmented, and inability to govern centrally. So if any of you don't have this, great. But but I think you guys are already well ahead of the curve. But we did have this, right? And this is just our reflection. But where have we progressed? I think that's the key, right? From where we were to where we are today. I think it's a story of progress, and that's the story that I'm going to share with you. And I'm going to talk about how we progressed. And I'm not going to talk about how we built our sourcing, how we built our integration, how we built our Hadoop. No, I'm not going to talk about that. That's the story on its own. So for that, you all need to be here the full day. So that's not going to happen. So I've got half an hour. So I'm going to talk only about our data intelligence layer. And why I think that's key is because of two things, right? Because that's the layer that democratizes data, and that's the layer that holds the key to the success of the platform. So, but I'll just briefly talk about what we did in sourcing, etc., so that you understand what we started ingesting data. And originally, we were a Teradata shop, RDBMS centric, entirely on Teradata. At 2012-13, we were one of the earliest adopters of Hadoop. We realized that we had to kind of repivot our architecture. And why? Primarily because Teradata had a strategy like any other appliance that the only way to grow the platform was to buy more appliances. So essentially, we ended up buying boxes after. No discredit. I think it's a great model. It used to work. But with the explosion in data, I think it was not a sustainable model. Cost became extremely prohibitive. So that's when we started thinking about the data ecosystem. And we started thinking about how we could just expand beyond just doing Teradata. And so we bought in Hadoop, and then even before the concept of data lake came into being, we started saying that, okay, Hadoop will become our tier one. So those familiar with the tier one, tier two, tier three, we said we'll land all our data into Hadoop. So that was our first, and we started ingesting data, building using our own Scala built algorithm, so Scala built software. So now we are using Apache NiFi, but we started off building it on our own homegrown Scala framework. So as I said, I'm going to my talk is about the data intelligence layer. If I go back to the previous one, it's about data intelligence. So I'm going to talk about how we kind of are doing that. So the first thing is, I call this whole thing about data being very restrictive, because for those who've been in this data world, historically, data has been very confined. Its usage restricted, limited, and also and sometimes denied to you to a set of users. So you never had data that was freely available. Even if it was available, you could not use it for whatever be the reason. So which will not go in. But essentially, you had the C-suite executives or the leadership team that had access to data in the form of spreadsheets, printouts, etc. And then you had the low-level junior analysts who used to actually prepare the data. So you had two extreme spectrums of users. And these were the people who actually started using the data, and there was no one in between. So you had a whole machine, a bunch of technologists who would gather this data, massage it, who would know what a business code stands for, what a city code stands for, how do I link my LE ID or customer ID to the account number. All this kind of knowledge resided in the minds and in spreadsheets, and it was seldom used for the right purpose. So my definition of democratization of data has three main components. The first is each and every staff member. So if we've got 87,000 employees, I want every staff in the organization to have access to data. That's all 87,000, including the person who is sitting at the reception, to have access to data. The second is the right levels of access. So the person sitting in the reception obviously can't see the CEO's salary or HR details, right? So just understand the knowledge. So that's the second. The third is the ability to govern this in a seamless manner. That, for me, is definition of democratization. So democratization is about ensuring that each and every person in the organization has access to the data, seamless manner, and the right levels. These are the three tenets for us. So what did we do? So first, when we started on this vision, right, we had this great vision, and we said, great, now we have to give data to everybody. But we wanted to establish some guiding principles. We said, good, we are going to start on this journey. We got Hadoop, you got Teradata, you got the tools, you got the technologies. But then what are going to be your guiding principles that's going to enable this whole transformation? So the first thing that we said is we have to use what is available. That is, we have to use the data lake. We spend so much effort and energy. We have close to 80 to 82% of the bank's data flowing in on a daily basis into the lake. I can't think of any other big financial institution of our size, which is present in close to 80 countries, having this volume of data. So that was a big success story for us. And if we didn't leverage that, I don't think we would be successful. So we had to, whatever solution we deploy had to be a natural extension of our data lake. The second thing, which goes back to the guiding democratization word, is about interactivity with data users. I wanted every single user in the bank to access the data. It cannot be that you have an analyst or IT person and then you would have the CIO or the CEO accessing the data. You had to have data at all levels for every person. Of course, simple goes without saying, because simplicity is the key to the most fabulous consumer experience. So we wanted it to be simple. And this is very important, the working with the entire data set. One of the, I don't know about you all, but what we struggled with our RDBMS implementation and with our implementation in the earlier form of EDWs was our ability to harness our entire data footprint. So even if I had, say, 2 petabytes of data, and if I had, say, 150 million rows, the ability for our software to work out of that entire data proved to be a hindrance. So it was a big challenge. Of course, we wanted the speed to meet SLAs and audit and integrate with our existing analytics. It's a given. So what we wanted to create was an architecture that would be a first-class citizen, right, and leverage our data lake. That's extremely important. Even now, as I attended a lot of events at partners and sessions, when I went and attended, I sat through the Spark streaming real-time enterprise warehouse. So the first point that every product or every presentation started by saying that you needed to gather the data. You needed to build a lake. That was the first point, right? You'd all have attended multiple sessions. And one of the first principles that everyone said was, how do you get all the data into one location? So we said, yes, we have to leverage what we already thought of in 2013, 14 and built. Abstract the complexities and bring visibility and self-service. So these were our guiding principles. Now, I spoke a lot about theory, but in practice, what did we actually build? I think this is a key takeaway. This is what we actually built. This is what we actually have, and this is what we actually run today. So this is something that exists not just in picture, but in production. This is our overview of our tech stack, and this is what we do. So we have internal data, which is our crime, financial, static, collections, payment, trade finance, banking. Entire data of the bank flows in. And like I said, today it is end of day. So, but it flows in daily, on a daily basis. It lands into the first stop is our data lake. And we also combine that with external data, Bloomberg, trend analysis. Then we've got data from our scoring systems. We have got data from our credit systems. We have got data from our regulators. All that flow in. The ability to combine internal and external data is extremely powerful, and we govern that, and we can get the data in a seamless manner. Of course, we apply the right level of duplication, machine learning. We've got tools. I'm not going to go into each of these. I think you all must be familiar. But the fact of the matter is, this is something that is not in theory, ladies and gentlemen. This is something that we have built, and it is working today. So that I think has been our big success story. So we needed this infrastructure to set the data genie free. Without this, and without having the right tools, which is sitting on our right corner, we would not be where we are today. So we needed this. This was an important thing. I think this slide is very, very, I would say, interesting, and also it depicts our journey in a very succinct manner. We've had 3 generations of journeys, right? So the first generation, which is not too far, which was just 4 or 5 years back, in fact, 2012. Till 2012-13, we were doing the first generation, primarily saying that sourcing, preparation, modeling, BI, everything would be led by IT. And that's true for most of your banks and organizations, which I think you're all working for. But that was our first genesis. And this is not when I talk about first gen, this is not long time back. So it's just 4-5 years. But what is so beautiful about this picture is in the last 3-4 years, we have jumped from the first gen to third gen, which is basically moved from IT-led in all these compartments to a business-led in the data intelligence sphere especially. So which talks about sourcing the data, preparing the ETL, modeling, and now what IT's primary job is to make sure that your data is flowing in a regular manner and in a fast manner. Doesn't mean these phases go away. What is important is these phases are there. These are very intrinsic part of the data journey. But what is important is who is actually leading it, who is actually doing it. I think that's the key. So we moved from IT doing most of the work to actually business saying, okay, we'll do. And in the process, what happened is the IT footprint in handling data shrunk. So we became more focused on the platform, resilience, making sure data is available, and business got involved more with the data. So that's our genesis. And I'm going to give you 2 examples where we've had success stories, which I want to share with you. The first is our financial crime compliance transformer. So Standard Chartered, originally to produce a financial crime compliance report, it used to take months and weeks. And we had a bit of regulatory hit. It's in the public news some years back. So as a result, the scrutiny and the level of monitors increased. The level of scrutiny became excruciating. So they asked for a lot of details, and the turnaround time was kind of shortened. So we had to respond in days. So one of the things, a classic financial crime compliance MI that used to take 21 days and weeks and months, we could turn around in 1 day, 2 days. And today, what we are doing it much faster than the monitor is requesting. So if they give us an SLA of 2 days, we're able to turn around in 1 day. And I think what I want to tell you is this is not a one-off case. What we have built is a platform that can enable it on a continuous basis. I think that's the true success. So I've just given you one success story, but we've got success in retail, we've got success in our CIB, we've got success in our trade domain, we've got success in our HR analytics. So the ability to democratize the data beyond the IT team has enabled our ability to speeden up and monetize the data. I think that's been a big success. Now, I spoke about a lot of good things, right? So it's not that the journey has been smooth. It's not been that the journey has been without its challenges. So we encountered a lot of challenges, and I wanted to, as part of my sharing with you, as much as I talked about, we built this ecosystem, we built this data lake, we put Spark, we put Paxata, we had Hadoop, Teradata. I also want to talk about some of the challenges that we faced, and I hope these challenges help you also. But first, even before the challenge, I think Dilbert and Scott Adams are geniuses, because they knew about these challenges in 2007. even 10 years before actually this. So with so much data, the first challenge was, do we actually have the right people? So it's not about data or technology anymore. I don't know if your organizations have shifted to that paradigm. At least in my organization, technology is no more a challenge. What we have done is our ability. So previously people are saying, oh, technology never gave the data. Oh, technology never produced this MI. Oh, technology never produced this report. Technology used to be a bottleneck. We have kind of shifted the game now. It's about technology saying, okay, now we've given you everything. Are you able to produce the insights? Are you able to ask the right questions? So the biggest challenge that at least we saw in our organizations, and this is not something we faced, of course we faced and we are continuing to face, is do we have the right people to ask the right questions? That's very, very important. So think about it from your organization perspectives. If you want to turn insights, if you want to turn data into insights, you need to have the right audience to ask the right questions. So this is a challenge that I face on a daily basis. Accuracy of data. So our data lake isn't that big. It's 3 to 4 petabytes and growing by the day. I envisage that by next year will be 12 petabytes, 12 to 15 petabytes. But even with that size, right, one of the biggest challenges that I face is a trade-off between the speed of data latency and the cleanliness of the data. So most of them keep asking, is the data correct? Is the data correct? So what does correct mean? Does correct mean that the data is an exact replica of the source system? Or does correct mean it's financially reconciled to the GL? Or does correct mean that even though the source is incorrect, you found out some discrepancies later and then you cleaned it up on our. So what does correct mean? So this is something that I grapple day in, day out. And so what we have tried to, we have done is, we have said the data lake is an exact replica of the source system. That I guarantee. That I say that that's operationally, I can tell you that this data. But is it reconciled to GL? Yeah, that we do in our Teradata EDW platform. But that doesn't mean the data is available instantly. Because as you're all aware, I think the holy grail is if all the data flowing in could by magic be reconciled to the GL that's available and by magic be available at the same time. I think we all would be out of, I think Strata conferences can be shut down then. That would be the day that we can shut down conferences. So, but that's the business ask. And there are also some practical challenges why financial reconciliation cannot happen instantly. One of the challenges is the GL adjustments that we post happen typically 6 to 7 hours after the GL is actually posted. So there are adjustments that happen. So even if you do financial reconciliation, yeah, you're ready, but I've done an adjustment 6 hours later. So is my data now reconciled? Unfortunately, it's out of sync. So these are the challenges. So I think the balance between speed and cleanliness will always be something that we exist, but our ability to work with unclean data is going to determine a lot of success. So we come there. So this is very funny, right? So I went around the Strata booths yesterday, today. I see tons of company. I think Strata never existed some years back. You all are testament to that. Now they have tons of companies knocking on doors. So Standard Chartered is no different. We have tons of tools. We've got a lot of tools. We have almost every fancy tool in the market. You name it, we've got it. So we are extremely good in buying new tools. But one of the biggest challenges that I faced and which I continue to face is, okay, you got these tools, but what are you actually sunsetting? What are you actually saying, okay, guys, thanks, we adopted you fast, but we need to sunset you even faster because there's some other new kid on the block. And their ability to sunset old ones will determine success. So I think we are doing it, but not at the pace at which I would want, and definitely not at the pace at which industry is asking. So anyhow, you'll see some examples that I'll talk about later, but that's something to think about. So we are a big, complex bank. We are present in 160, like I said, we are a 150-year-old organization. We are present in more than 80 countries. So one of the biggest challenges was working with our regulators and then say, hey, a startup, if I had to onboard a company, they had to have a paid up capital, they had to have a certain number of employees, they had to produce balance sheet, and then me going and asking our procurement team and said, hey, we are going to work with this small company with 3 employees. They looked at me and said, eee. So these are some of the, I think legal and regulatory framework needs to improve for us to really embrace startups. And finally, this whole cloud thing, especially from a banking perspective, everyone sees the cloud. Nobody wants to go to the cloud, right? So cloud is an attractive proposition hanging up there, while other markets have taken up and kind of embraced it in a full manner. Banks are, I won't say struggling, but are very hesitant. And they're using the stick of governance, regulation, privacy, etc. But I think, at least this is my personal opinion, the sooner we adopt cloud, I think the faster it is going to benefit financial institutions and other large conglomerates, because almost everything is going to happen. You're not going to buy physical hardware anymore. That ain't happening, guys. Unfortunately, we continue to do it, but that's going to be a thing of past. So that's something that we definitely need to start thinking about. So I think the whole cloud thing, will regulation support or hinder, is something that we need to. So we have done this. I spoke about some of our challenges. This is, I won't say vision, but I think this is something that is existing today in the market, which we want to embrace. So right now we are, like I said, we have data which is there, end of day. But I truly want this data democracy to become information democracy. I think that will be a true success. We spoke about data democracy, data, right? But as long as you turn it to the ability to provide insight, and then it's not that you cannot, it's not enough if you give them a fishing rod and teach them how to fish. But if you can actually say that, hey, the fish can be caught in these particular areas, and these are salt liver, these fish are much tastier in this, they exist better, and they probably don't exist here. So giving that much more importance, I think definitely it's very important. And that's going to be a challenging step. So this is, again, creating a real-time ingestion platform. I attended that session on Spark on how they're building a whole, architecting a real-time platform. So it's not hype, but it's something that will be my logical next step. We have an end-of-day platform, but I want to move to real-time, and their ability to quickly embrace that is going to determine our success even more. This is a big challenge for me today. I don't know about you guys in your this thing. Our data lake has got, when we started the journey, we had 20 users. Today we have close to 3,200 users. And like I said, my vision is 87,000 users. And right now, the way we are restricting users' access is by saying no one has access to data. So we are kind of building walls and then saying you can only access certain amount of data. But what's the point if I have all the data in the bank, and if I tell a consumer you can only access this part of data, you can't access every other data. So I think that's something that I want to automate. And there are, again, tools and technologies. All these are not wish lists, but I think there are tools and technologies available which I want to embrace. So this is something that we are closely working with our partners, Paxata and other companies, where we want to do intelligent data profiling. So let me talk about it a little, because there's something very close to my heart. So if I had data, so how many of you know what data profiling is? Okay, not bad. So you know what? So basically what you do is you look at the data, then you kind of tell what is in line, what is out of line, what is in sync, so stuff like that. But what is intelligent data profile? Can I look at the data and suppose I had a field called zip code, and suppose I said, okay, zip code is numeric of 10. Okay, all my data is numeric of 10, but how many of them are actually valid zip codes? Even if I had numeric of 10, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0 a valid zip code? It ticked the box saying it is, it's a numeric, it ticked the box as far as the data type is concerned, but is it truly valid? I give you a very simple example, but you can understand what I'm trying to. So that will take and extend that argument to other complex fields and other complex data types, and you can see how simple life will become. So, and imagine if I say that zip code to say Singapore zip code, if I extend it to American zip code, if I say I extend it to Indian zip code, so that becomes that much more intelligent. So that's something that we are already working on. Yeah, this is finally Nenshad's and my, what do you say, our holy grail, at least, which we want to achieve. We want to build semantic intelligence into the platform. So the ability to link data and the ability to provide those linkages in an automated manner. So a simple example could be, can I link customer account, product, transaction, the task that I said our BAs are doing, our data analysts are doing in a manual manner. So they've got their knowledge in their brains and spreadsheets. Today they sit and they look at the field and say, yeah, you can link this field to this, and that's what they're doing. So can you do it in a very I mean, can you do it in an automated manner? Can the system provide insights? That's something that we are trying to. But last but not least, right, I think the thing that we want to at least, what I want to do is continue to monetize information. I think true success is only when you monetize. All this is good, but having done this, did it provide an uplift of, say, $300,000 in the revenue? Was your campaign's take-up rate much better? Were you able to avert any fines? Were you able to alert customers earlier? So I think the ability to track and measure and provide data, I think that is going to be the true success. I think, honestly, we all suck at this. I'm sorry to say, it's no disrespect to all the data professionals here. I head the whole technology for Stan Chartered for data, and I'm not able to measure. I'm sorry to say. We have delivered projects worth millions of dollars. Always we go and tick our box and we have celebratory beers and we thump our chest. But then he says, okay, what is it that you've delivered? We have delivered a project. So what is the dollar uplift? Okay, so I think that's something that we definitely need to do better, and we need to measure that. I'll stop with that. Thank you very much. Happy to take questions. Yeah, so right now, like I said, I started this journey. We are EDW, which was, even before Teradata, we had data which was residing in multiple siloed DBs, DB2, Excels, nothing different from what most of us in this room would have seen. So at that time, there were around 20 to 30 users of data, because the rest were all receivers of data. So from there, we have moved to a few thousands. And eventually, I want to move to 87,000. That's my magic number. Hopefully, the bank retains those many employees. If they reduce, then I don't. But essentially, every employee in the bank should have a startup kit of accessing data. That's the vision that we are going. Yes, sir. Okay. So if I had to give you two examples, I'll talk about two examples. The first would be the ability to link disparate data, similar data across disparate data sets. That's the easier example. So if I had customer number coming in from, say, data set A, and if I had customer number coming in from data set B, the ability to automatically identify that customer number A is the same as customer number B, this, without the need for a data analyst to kind of, so that's a very simple example. A more complex example would be if I can build rules into this whole process to say that actually this customer holds these accounts and that linkage is defined by this relationship. So today you do a join between multiple tables, right? And how do you do it? So you know, as a data analyst, I know that I need to link table A and table B using this key field which is there. Can the system learn it over a period of time? Can I build it? And there are companies that have, again, it's not something that's not been done, and they have that. But how do you build it as an ecosystem? Not just take it as a product and then do a one-off case, define a rule or a probability model. It's about doing that in an ecosystem and doing it for 165 different files across, say, tens of thousands of fields. And if you're able to build that intelligent, and what does it lead to? To answer your question in a more holistic manner, what does it lead to? Can I have a model for the bank which says, okay, this customer is linked to this product, to this accounts, and this is the 360-degree view of the customer that the system can intelligently recognize. You can kind of add flavors and kind of tune it later at a further point of time. But the ability to identify the underlying semantics and linkages between the data, that's what is intelligent data. Any further questions? Yeah. Yeah, for us, we do get alerts on a real-time basis, and we do take the data, and we do anti-money laundering reports. We do risk monitoring. We do financial crime compliance based on that streaming data. We do have rules that we have set as and when the data comes in, and then someone still monitors it because it goes out to the regulators. There is still an extra level of check that is done. But yeah, we do that. Yes, sir. Sorry. Yeah. So you're talking about the business-led and IT-led, right? Yeah. Okay. So I don't have a percentage, but I'll talk. You're talking about this, right? Yeah. So what we do is primarily standardization. You're right. Getting the data, applying basic standard rules, profiling, and cleansing the data. That's our job. The rest, I think, even that we want machines and using machine learning and algorithms to automate. We really want to shrink our IT population who actually plays with data. Actually, you don't need so many people. Think about it. You're getting the data. So the decision makers are today not empowered. We are controlling the data, and by the time it reaches the decision makers, data is already stale. So we want to reduce at least the vision is to reduce the latency time that we spend handling the data and give it off to end users and then ask them to play with the data. So right now, if you ask me, we have really progressed in terms of life cycle. That is, we are getting users more involved. End users I'm talking about, not middlemen. End users actually involved in the life cycle much earlier, and we can push it further. Yes, that's a very good catch. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And of course, the ability for business to play around their own data, right? So the fact that Paxata as a tool could help them to say, okay, now that you've given me the data, and instead of you, what we were doing essentially was giving a spreadsheet. It went to a person sitting somewhere in a shared services location, and then they actually looked at the data, input it into a system, then they wrote some rules, gave yet another handoff. Essentially, what they were doing was multiple layers of ETL. That's the reality. So you had the data, but the knowledge was sitting across multiple use. So we got an end user who said, I know what I want. If you can give me the data and the screen, and you can govern it in in whatever manner you want, can I do it much faster? That cut down to 2 days from 21 days. You're right. Yeah.
When the users train, did you have to train the business users for data preparation or that kind of activity?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a good question again. So I think training is an inherent part of any adoption of any new tool. But I think how simple it is. So in our case, like we for data prep, we use Paxata, so it was pretty intuitive. There was initial inhibition as with any new tools, but as you start using it, right, you get the feel of it. It's pretty intuitive. It's pretty easy to use. And what we try to do is only adopt tools that can act, especially towards end users, that are much easy, that can be more of self-service rather than need for IT to handhold. So the word, sorry to say this again, metadata, data dictionary is again over-abused word, right? So metadata is prevalent throughout your life cycle, right? From your data sourcing. So you have different kinds of metadata, operational, technical, business. So does it provide a full view of all the metadata in the ecosystem? Answer is no, because what it does is only for that particular ecosystem. The metadata for the whole system, we got a separate tool which governs the metadata right from sourcing to capturing the transformation in between to the BI reports. So obviously, unless there's a tool that is overarching, if you go back to the old this thing, unless you have a tool that covers all these life cycles, unless you have a tool that covers all this life cycle, you cannot capture the metadata. And we have implemented such a tool and a business glossary also. Yes, sir.
Is there any big changes compared with the OLAP?
Can you be more specific about the question? Yeah, Hadoop is different from OLAP. So if you, yeah. Yeah, that's okay. If you ask that way, yeah, that's a fair question. No, that's a fair question. Then I need to talk about my sourcing automation, the ingestion framework that we built. So earlier cases, getting data, loading it to RDBMS is, I would say, much more simpler and easier than getting data and loading into Hadoop for simple reason. Hadoop is a file system, right? So HDFS, you don't directly, so, and the other challenge is historically our product processors are relational, either DBs or mainframes, etc. So can you build connectors to source data? Like our systems, some of our legacy systems are 25 years old. Like, I don't know if you heard, anyone in this whom heard of Hogan? Yeah, sir, you can definitely, you would have heard. So notice, but yeah, that's the system. Some of our systems that data come from. And today, does Hadoop have a connected to Hogan? Answer is no. So what did we do? That's why I said we used Apache NiFi, Scala. We built some pre-processing routines to ingest the data. To answer your point, yes. So it is definitely different. It is not an RDBMS it is not just an ingest into an OLAP DB. So we had to make some adjustments. We are actually going to open source our ingestion framework. So those who are interested, write me a note and I can share with you where we are putting it on GitHub. So you can use so it can help to bootstrap your ingestion process. So I can share that with you. Any last questions? Yeah.
How did you manage a centralized data store and have your regions be independent as well?
Yeah, so we haven't cracked it. Very honestly, like I said, leaguer and regulator, I didn't touch on it. Our abilities, for example, I'll give you a very simple example. We've got our support center. Our data center is in Hong Kong. All our data sits in Hong Kong, which is fine. But then we got some of our support personnel in India. I've got some of my team. I have teams in India, Manila, KL, Singapore, different locations. But support personnel in India cannot see Pakistan data because India and Pakistan, you cannot see that. So I necessarily need to build a team somewhere else, and you had to provide. So we got user access matrices, we've got role-based access, and the need to provide in-country access. Apart from it, one more regulation that many countries are coming up with is don't have centralized data. Try to localize your data. So again, we are working through the regulators there, but these are the two kinds of challenges which we have not fully cracked. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.